Hello there, this is Steve here in Sydney on the lay gnosis website, truebluehealer.com, where in just 20 minutes you can get physical evidence that things have suddenly changed, and you can get physical evidence of the divine spark within you. The divine spark is not just a kind of urban legend or urban myth. It's a physically provable thing that will begin communicating with you in about 5 or 6 days' time, 7 days' time, with vivid messaging dreams. To start with, and ultimately finish up with an internal mentoring voice. Now, I used to say it's okay for you to wake up when you're good and ready, because most people are too entranced in the theme park called Earth that we live in. It's such a wonderful place. But dare I say, the heaven on earth that you're living now, with every hot and cold running convenience at your fingertips and glistening, sparkling mobile phones and shiny cars to drive around in and food at every street corner, that sort of thing, that's been taken from you. That is being taken from you. And the reason is that people don't know what they really are because they don't want to wake up. And not wanting to wake up has this consequence, a very destructive long-term outcome, it seems. And I'm going to explain to you why. And it all begins back in the Council of Nicaea, 325 AD, when the Christianized Roman Empire decided on some religious definitions. And one thing you can keep in mind, I'm going to play you a little video. And the man's going to talk about, he has a wonderful speaking voice, he's very engaging, like Richard Burton, a beautiful voice to listen to, but the content of what he says is really worth listening to because he is a Gnostic, just like me. Just like you are intended to be. And he's a Gnostic, and he's explaining what seems to be strange. He's talking about definite and indefinite articles in languages. That's the and a. So when you say a cat, you mean a cat, implying there are many and any old cat, right? And when you say the cat, it's demonstrative in the sense that you mean this one here that we're talking about, implying there's only one. Okay, so that's the definite and indefinite article. The and a, and how it's been mistranslated many centuries ago, and you read it today in modern religious books and you don't get it, you don't understand it. And for that reason the religions have been distracting people away from their personal potential wrongly, harmfully, psychopathically for many, many centuries. And all religions seek to do this. So, for example, Islam says there are no miracles in Islam, there are no psychic experiences, there is nothing miraculous about the life of the Islamic person, it's just robotic obedience. Okay? Well, that's not true at all. And Alan Watts is going to explain to you in about 4 minutes here about the tiny mistake that's really kept the human race asleep a lot longer than they should have been. And I entreat you to listen to him. He's a very entertaining speaker. Okay, so here he is, Alan Watts, Gnostic philosopher and wonderful explainer of things complex. Okay, here he is.
So, when somebody speaks as an authority, that means speaks as the author. That's all it means. It's a statement of which you are the author, and therefore for which you assume responsibility. That is to speak with authority. And to be original is likewise not to be freaky, but to speak from the origin. That is what Christians mean when they say to speak in the Spirit, to have your mouth possessed by the Holy Spirit, as they believe the mouth of Jesus was possessed by the Holy Spirit. So the gospel of Jesus, which of course was hushed up from its inception, was that wake up everybody and find out who you are. asking that, again in the Gospel of St. John, they, pointing to his disciples, may be one, even as you, Father, and I are one. And when he was accused of blasphemy, the Jews took up stones to stone him, you know. And he said, many good works have I shown you from the Father, and from which of these do you stone me? And they said, for a good work we don't stone you, but for blasphemy, because you being a man make yourself God. Now listen to the reply. He said, is it not written in your law, I have said ye are gods? And if that is what the scripture says, it can't be denied. So why do you tell me I blaspheme because I say I am a son of God? No answer. Because I said I am a son of God. It doesn't say that in your King James translation. It says I am the son of God. And you'll see the italicized, and you will think that that is for emphasis if you don't realize that passages in italics in the King James Bible are interpolations by the translators. In Greek, leaving out the definite article is equivalent of having the indefinite article. Weos to theou is a son of God, not oios to theou. So, son of, in Hebrew and in Arabic, means of the nature of. When we call someone a son of a bitch, we mean bitchy. And so if you call someone a son of God, you mean divine. Of the nature of God. As the Nicene Creed subsequently defined it, he is of one substance with the Father. But what happened was that this being blasphemy for the Jews, it became blasphemy for the Christians, for anyone else than Jesus to say it. They said, okay, baby, it was so with you, but there it stops. No more of this business. And as a result of that, Jesus was made irrelevant by pedestalization, by being kicked upstairs. In spite of the fact that he said, greater works than these that I do shall you do. Oh no. Upstairs with you, baby. Because we just can't have that sort of thing going on in a monarchical universe. We're not going to have democracy in the kingdom of heaven. So, this is why the gospel is impossible. Because we are supposed to follow the example of Christ. Where he says, for example, be not anxious for the morrow. Do not worry about what you shall eat, what you shall drink, and what you shall wear. God will take care of you. Doesn't he take care of the birds? Don't the flowers grow? They're wonderful. They're crazy. They're great. What are you worrying about? I've never heard a sermon preached on that. Never. Because it's totally subversive. The economy would crash. So they say, oh yes, that's all very well, but he was the boss's son. See, he had that colossal advantage. Take up your cross and follow him. Hey, but wait a minute. I don't know I'm going to be resurrected 3 days later. I can't do all those miracles. He had an unfair advantage. So how can you ask us to follow the example of Christ? But supposing he didn't have an unfair advantage. Supposing that what was true about Jesus as a Son of God is true of us. Only a few of us know it. And we are pretty careful to be quiet about it, lest the same thing happen to us as happened to Jesus. And indeed it often does. And you know, you get these people from Arkansas or Texas or anywhere in the Bible Belt who never heard of the Upanishads, and they have this cosmic consciousness experience, and they realize that that's what happened to Jesus. They say, I'm Jesus, come back. Well, everybody says to them, you aren't Jesus. It's pretty obvious you're not Jesus. You're just Joe Dogs. Well, he says that's what they said about Jesus. He has a perfect argument, except they say you're not much of a Jesus. They say, all right, if you're Jesus, command that these stones be made bread. And he says, a wicked and deceitful generation seeketh for a sign, and there shall no sign be given. Now, why talk about this? Is it interesting? Is it important for the human being to realize that in some sense of the word, whatever it means, he is God or one with God, as is plainly taught by the Hindus, hinted at by the Buddhists, only they don't like to put it out as a concept, in case people will use the concept as an idol to hang on to. They want you to find out for yourself and not believe in it. And certainly the Taoists understand it, the Sufis understand it, a lot of people understand it.
So thanks for that wonderful clarifying explanation from Alan Watts, Gnostic Alan Watts. So can I now say to you all, good morning, all you sleeping sons of God. That's what you really are. That's the meaning of the divine spark, that there's a living God within all of you. Ye are gods, is written in ancient holy books, but people don't understand what that means because they're asleep while reading it. Okay? So wake up is his entreaty at the very beginning of that video, and I repeat that to you now. People remaining asleep for long periods of time and enjoying theme park Earth is leading us into what seems to be a dead end. It seems like we need to raise the levels of stress because all enjoying the theme park Earth and assuming it will just go on forever. That's what the Russians thought about the Soviet Empire. Mikhail Gorbachev reported that. They never had any doubt that they would win the struggle for existence, and they were completely wrong. So you can be completely wrong about believing that European civilization will go on forever unless we change the way we think. And that includes waking up to find out what you really are. And also waking up to what other people really are. And almost certainly wrongly believe they're just smart animals. So after Alan Watts' very neat explanation of what the divine spark in each person actually means in terms of religious explanation, and it's true, by the way, because of that divine spark you can get at least two types of physical evidence. One of them, you definitely cannot duplicate yourself with any kind of placebo effect, and you're constantly shown that that more is known about your future on a day-to-day basis than you know yourself. And I get that signaled to me all the time, and it's very, very useful and very handy and wonderfully amusing sometimes. If a lot more people knew what they really were, there would be a lot more psychopathic behaviour in the world today. Rest of that video, Alan Watts beautifully explains how the concept of disaffection, disconnection from the divine spark leads people to do bulldozing actions toward other people and groups. And that brings us to Orlando massacre today in Florida, okay? It's just happened and it's just reported. Now, some people who don't really know what they are on Twitter are doing, apparently, reported to me, is a swarm of tweets praising the slaughter of white people. And it's known by the names on the Twitter feeds that a lot of Jewish people are exultant at the death of white people. And they are very clearly altering, they have altered, this is known, it's established, all the multicultural immigration policies of all the great white nations has been put in place by Jewish people with the intent of destroying the white race. So the greatest Holocaust in human history, perpetrated by Jewish infiltrators, basically, Jewish activists, is now taking place, and we just heard the first few battles. Orlando will be a stepping stone to a larger event, and there will be more cheering on Twitter from Jewish people, Muslims, and some self-hating whites, I am certain. That's part of the problem of not knowing what you really are and being able to think rationally, okay? So, the greatest Holocaust in the history of the human race is underway, and you are the victim of it, and you don't want to wake up. That's my soft, petty little grievance against people who are enjoying theme park Earth a little bit too much. People who don't know what they are, people who are deeply aggrieved and belligerent toward others, bulldozing others, those are the words of Alan Watson, bulldozing others basically out of grief and anger because they don't know what they really are. And the recidivist nature of Jewish people who have been thrown out of 100 countries are now repeating their behaviour. And this is echoed by Gilad Atzmon. The next Holocaust is overdue. Gilad Atzmon echoes this in one of his lectures, and he's quite serious, and you can literally feel the storm clouds gathering. It's already begun. The first few drops of the Holocaust of white people has begun. Jews are cheering it on, hoping it will become a thunderstorm that will wash the white race out of existence. This is because Jews don't know what they are either. They've deliberately held themselves back as they've retained a bit of animal behaviour, feral ferociousness, by their careful inbreeding to retain this feral ferociousness. And they think it's okay to do that. And the rest of us are going to suffer dramatically if we don't wake up from the dream of theme park Earth, which seems to have a use-by date coming soon unless white people do something about it. Where I'm going with this, I find deeply unpleasant. So I'm going to take a leaf out of Albert Einstein's, the much esteemed and most brilliant mind on earth, Albert Einstein. I'm going to take a leaf out of his book and do a thought experiment with you. I want you to think up your own interpolations and your own extrapolations to, which you're very good at, being a Western person. You're very good at that. So I'll just tell you some bits of evidence and what I think, and see if you can agree or disagree below this video. And can I say to you that these Jewish people who are so angry toward all other groups of people and see whites as enemy number one and they must be eradicated, they are attempting to turn Europe into another Palestine where Palestinians can be bombed and strafed at will, and you just keep saying magic mantra like Holocaust, Holocaust while you're doing it, and it's okay to eradicate entire races of people while they preserve their own race jealously. Did you just know today in the news, it's now been revealed if a Jew marries a non-Jew in Israel, there's a 2-year prison sentence. Can you believe it? So they are racial supremacists of the greatest magnitude possible. You can't marry a non-Jewish person. You can't have a non-religious marriage in Israel anymore. It's been revealed. So it's most surprising. They are the most racist people on earth, and it comes back to their feral ferociousness that they decided to retain by inbreeding for many, many centuries. Okay, so they are the problem. Gilad Atzmon talks about the inevitability of the next Holocaust due to recidivist Jewish behaviour, and I am very regretfully inclined to agree. And it would seem, and I'll say it again just to put the graphic image in your mind, Israel wants to turn Europe into another Palestinian massacre place. Okay? Simple as that. They just want to repeat what they're doing in Palestine to Europeans. And what do the helpless Palestinians do? Well, they use bread knives, don't they, on the necks of Israelis. The number of Palestinians is small, and Israelis have got a lot of infrastructure and police force available. And so the attacks on Israelis are small in number, but they make the news, don't they? And they're really played up as, Islamic infamy, that sort of thing. Well, there's intellectual mistakes made by the Jews in their plotting to Holocaust the European white races. It seems to me that Europeans have been disarmed, but they still outnumber Jewish people vastly, and they all have access to bread knives. There will come a time, it seems to me, the Jews are pushing Europeans to the brink of it's us or them. Which side's going to move first and fastest? The Jews are playing this shocking brinkmanship, inviting their own Holocaust again. And I want this to be only a thought experiment that never happens. I'm hoping the Jews will wake up to what they are doing is very dangerous to their own existence. But they seem to enjoy playing this brinkmanship as they've done it before with Weimar Germany, when they declared war on Adolf Hitler. We are now at the point where they've declared war on white people. Certainly masses of Jewish people on Twitter are cheering the death of white people in Florida, Orlando, right? So, by all means agree or disagree with this thought experiment that I'm expressing to you for your serious consideration and about whether we should try and get more people to wake up as to what they really are and stop their psychopathic behaviours. So, can I just make some predictions from this thought experiment to likely outcomes? More intellectual mistakes made by the Zionist Jewish agitators include the fact that every one of their identities is known and they sign their names on these Twitter feeds cheering on the death of white people, meaning they could readily be targeted. No one can hide anymore if you're on the internet. Seems to be a serious mistake to put your name on hateful anti-white ranting all over the internet. It seems to be inviting someone to come and visit you at home, as far as I can tell, or perhaps in your place of work. That's just a thought experiment I'm experiencing as I talk to you now. The other thing is, the last Holocaust happened in country areas of one or two nations. And this time I think it'll be very generally spread over numerous nations. And all it takes is people to wake up to the fact that the Holocaust of Europe has well and truly begun. So I leave this horrifying thought experiment with you, and please explain to me how I'm wrong. I want to be told I'm wrong. I want to be told that Gilad Atzmon is wrong. Please explain to me how wrong I can be. I want to hear it. I don't like this future at all for humanity. So Steve here in Sydney, over and out.